With Auburn's new defensive scheme, we'll tell you who we think benefits most from what Ron Roberts will do defensively in 2023.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yahtzee.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Talking all things scheme on this Ferg Friday with Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer. Two new coordinators, obviously, to complement the new head coach and the rest of the coaching staff that Coach Freeze has brought in. But Ferg, over the last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about a lot of new defenders that we're going to see, and they brought in rotation pieces, it looks like, on the defensive line. But let's start with the linebackers, which I think going into the transfer portal period would have been the weakest position group on the team. And then you go out and you get Austin Keys, the former Ole Miss linebacker. You go out and get DeMario Tolan, the former LSU linebacker. And all of a sudden, you're getting a little bit more depth and experience into the room. But with what Roberts is going to do with these linebackers, who do you think kind of benefits the most? From what we can tell, a lot of variables that we don't know the answers to quite yet, but who do you think is going to benefit the most as far as how Roberts likes to use linebackers based on what we've seen at Baylor?
Yeah, I really like, Austin Keys a lot. He's a big dude. He's got a lot of experience being a linebacker in the SEC West the last couple of years. But I really like scheme-wise, I really love DeMario Tolan just because he's very versatile, very athletic guy and can do a lot of different things for you. At LSU last season, I know there were people in Baton Rouge that were like, yeah, this dude's going to be a starter here sooner rather than later. He ends up coming to Auburn. And it's just, I like Tolan's ability to kind of do some of everything. And I think that's kind of going to be the big thing for this defense is that there's a lot more blitzing that you do from the inside linebacker spot than you might have done, under the last two defense coordinators for Auburn, under Kevin Steele specifically as well. Yeah. So Tolan was one of those guys where I just think athletically he checks so many different boxes that I'm really intrigued to see kind of how they put him in range. And I mean, you've got Tolan, you've got Keys, Cam Riley. I mean, I do think this is a scheme that can really kind of open some things up for Cam Riley some more as well, just to, give him a variety of things to do and see where he kind of goes. Cause he has such a unique kind of size and skill set at that position. So yeah, but I keep going back to Tolan just because he was such a good linebacker coming out of high school, and he goes down to LSU and finds a way to get on the field, finds a way to get some people's attention early on. And that's the type of player that Auburn needed more at the linebacker spot, just because it's a lot, outside of Cam Riley and Wes Snyder, you've got a lot of dudes that don't have a ton of experience. So getting those guys in with experience in a variety of schemes, I think is going to help them.
The small sample size of Tolan, I think, represents a lot more upside than anybody else in the linebacker room right now. Even with Keys, we saw him play 400 snaps last year for Ole Miss. Didn't score super well, and you and I have talked about PFF kind of being hit or miss based on what you're looking at. I don't know if Ole Miss's scheme really helped their linebackers a whole lot.
And their defense wasn't great in general. So, it's hard to pluck an individual out of that. He got it.
Yeah, that's right. But Tolan, his 20 snaps against Alabama, on several of those, he was asked to spy Bryce Young. Obviously, that's really, really exciting. That's also the game where he scored the highest. But just with Roberts wanting to, he puts linebackers close to the line of scrimmage, a lot of simulated pressure. And I think you asked him a few questions about havoc rating and stuff like that, which I thought was really interesting that you shared in the newsletters at Auburn Observer. But to me, he checks all of the boxes for all of this.
Yeah, I think if you're wanting to look at linebackers, what is the future of the linebacker spot? What does Auburn want at linebacker moving forward, this inside linebacker spot? I would look, and this is, again, this is going to be kind of, I'm going to say this and people are going to be like, well, yeah, of course. But I would look at what Georgia and Alabama, LSU have done at inside linebacker in the past, because that's kind of the same kind of setup. We talk about simulated pressures, talk about creepers. One of the things that makes Georgia so scary on defense, not just the fact that they're all 5 stars and they're all death machines.
Talent aside, right?
Talent aside, Glenn Schumann does a great job of using simulated pressures. And for those of you who don't know what simulated pressures are, it's like if you've ever watched you ever watch Georgia or Baylor, LSU, any of these, and other teams do it as well. Alabama will do it. They'll get to the line of scrimmage, and it'll be like there's guys with their hands in the dirt, and there's guys on the edge, and and it's like they're moving around. It's like you don't know which one's coming and which one's going in terms of dropping back into coverage or going after you in pressure. And so what they do is they try to make it so that before the snap, the line and the quarterback's trying to have to figure out, okay, who are we going to have to block? Snap comes, they may only send 4, but it might be 3 linemen and a linebacker, and drop another guy. But because of everything, you can do more with less and still have 7 in coverage, still have 8 in coverage at some time, but still get a crazy good pass rush because you were able to, successfully simulate, hey, we're bringing this guy. Oh, wait, no, we're not. Actually, we're coming right here with you. And so linebackers are key to that because you want your linebackers. They're not going to be your top pass rushers, but if you want to use them, they might be able to occupy a spot where you got to be athletic enough and you got to be good enough at getting to the quarterback, where if you're shooting it down the middle, you've got to be able to get pressure and let some of those other guys kind of eat while also being able to drop back in coverage, because sometimes you're going to want to bluff and you're going to want to show that you're blitzing, and then you back off and the line's still in a frenzy and the quarterback's still in a frenzy, and you can still, affect the passer. And Georgia is so good at doing that. Go watch their national title game, other games. Right. Like they got a sack and they only sent 4, but before the snap, it looked like they might have been sending 7.
Yeah.
That's a Ron. That is a Ron Roberts specialty. He is the godfather of the creeper simulated pressure. And so many really good defensive coordinators across football, not even guys who work for him, although he's had a lot of awesome dudes work for him, are really good at that. And linebackers are so key to that part of their scheme.
Yep. Imitation's the greatest form of flattery, or whatever. Is that the phrase? But I don't think people realize, and Auburn fans talk about this a lot just because the offensive line has been what it has been for the last 5 years from the Auburn perspective. But so many people don't realize like how difficult blitz pickup is. And when you've got these 5 dudes, like you've got to adjust and like what you're seeing in front of you, and you've got to communicate like, okay, you got him, I got him, and over time, like if you do that over the course of a game, Ferg, eventually you're going to make it the wrong decision.
Yeah.
I mean, make college athletes make decisions over and over and over and over again, and eventually they're going to mess up, and you're going to get DeMario Tolan or Marcus Hare. I mean, somebody's going to go unblocked. And if it's like a 3rd and 8, like, all right, cool, you're forcing a punt.
Yeah, and that's not even including like twists and stunts. There was and I'm sure we'll talk about there
were like no stunts last year.
Yeah,
they did like 4 times a game.
I'm sure we'll talk about it with like the rest of the defense, but one of the things that Ron Roberts has said, I watched a clinic of his after the 21 season. And he was talking about that, he said the vast majority of the havoc we created in the pass rush was with some sort of twist or some sort of stunt. Because his philosophy, and I wrote about it last week when I wrote about Ron Roberts, it's just that his philosophy is that you're not going to have the best talent. I mean, this dude has coached at Baylor is the biggest job he's been at. He's been at Louisiana. He's been at Delta State, a lot of these other smaller schools. He's like, I don't have the guys to just sit up here and say, we're going to whip you one-on-one. So what you got to do is you got to outsmart, you got to outthink, and you got to do something, like you said, to make college players think more. And it's like, as he says, you can't sit back in a normal scheme, in a normal base defense, and expect to win over and over again. We just don't have the players for that. And the funny thing is about that is he says that, but you look at the defenses that have the best talent in football, Georgia, Alabama, others, like Georgia's a great example. They have more talent than anybody else on defense, and they still do all this stuff, which makes them even scarier. So that's the thing you've got to continue to innovate and be a step above, especially if you're at a place like Auburn where you're going to recruit well, but you're never probably going to recruit at the peak level of your biggest rivals.
Yep. No, look at your rival winning 2 straight natties. Do what they're doing. There's a reason that it works. Yeah, I want to talk about the defensive backs. I mean, there's like 8 or 9 guys you can make the case should be a starter, and obviously that's not all going to happen. Can we play all of these guys? Let's discuss that in just a moment. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. You can go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up today. Ferg, the Eagles, a 1.5-point favorite in Super Bowl 57. Where are you leaning on this? When you taking the Eagles or the Chiefs? I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this. I just threw this on you.
Real quick, I love this Super Bowl matchup because as a neutral, I love watching these two teams play almost all the time. So it's really cool to see. I would say the Eagles are probably a better team, so that makes sense. But how do you line up for the fact that Mahomes and Kelsey and all that? It's just I would probably lean Eagles because 1.5. When you're betting 1.5, you're basically saying all right, who's going to win the game?
Yeah, it's a push at that point.
That rare 1-point win, could mess you up. But I would love to see either. I mean, again, either of these teams will win. I think the Eagles have the best constructed roster in the way they go about things in football, and I love Andy Reid more than probably any other football coach on the planet. So, I'd lean Eagles, but man, it would be cool to see the Chiefs get it again.
Patrick Mahomes helped me win a fantasy league this year, so
yes, he did.
I'm gonna keep on rooting for him. So I'll take the Chiefs. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet. You can do that by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, Ferg. Looking at this defensive backfield, you get all your starters back, and several people are projecting even a change. Maybe that corner opposite of DJ James, which is fascinating. So, I mean, you bring back DJ, you bring back Nehemiah, you bring back Donovan Kaufman, you bring back Keionte Scott. A lot of people think Keionte Scott should probably start going into the season. Jalen Simpson, is he a corner or safety? He certainly looked better at safety towards the end of last year. How do you play all of these guys? What do you expect this rotation to look like? Are we going to see regular 8 and 9 guys playing DB every single game?
I'm a big believer in especially at DB. I'm a big believer in you need to be able to be too deep at every spot.
Yeah.
And guys that at any point in time, you need to be ready to roll there. When you say there's 8, 9, 10 guys who could play, I'm like, yeah, you should probably get ready for that. You're going to have 2 corners, you're going to have 2 safeties. And then if you go with what, Ron Roberts has done in the past with his DB, you have that star spot, that 5th defensive back that, honestly, we've seen Auburn run a nickel. You have to play the nickel. Nickel is the base defense in football these days. And now it's kind of getting more to where the extra, having 6 DBs back there is now the thing that you have to do some, more often than usual. But that spot, you look at Jalen Petra, who was at Baylor, and then he ended up, 2nd round pick with the Texans. He's a starter there. It's a DB spot where it's there were some years at Baylor. There's I think 2 to 3 years at Baylor. That was one of their leading tackles for loss guys. When they talk about havoc, blitzing that extra DB, you do all that kind of stuff is going to be interesting. I think you want versatile safeties, and you want several of them if you're Auburn. So when you ask about a guy like Jalen Simpson, yeah, maybe that's kind of more of a good feature for him. We'll be interested to see how much of what has been called kind of flyover country football, where you play 3 safeties at a time. Iowa State did it a ton. TCU did it a lot this year. I wonder how much you're going to kind of see that with Auburn at times this season as well, because it does help you. It makes you prevent deep passes, but also gives you the flexibility to create a little bit more havoc down the middle, especially if you want to blitz. So get them all. You need them all. And I think that was also part of the reason why Auburn looked into this room and just said, all right, let's get as many DBs we can get as true freshmen this year as well. Not only develop them for the future, but if you can play there, I think there will be opportunities for you. I know a lot of people are really high on K and Lee.
How could you not be?
Yeah. Just turn them loose. Turn them loose. I mean, you need as many DBs as you can. So especially in a system where you're going to routinely see 5, potentially 6, and maybe even more on some things when you talk about being able to move dudes around.
What do you think about the corner battle opposite DJ James? Do you think it's Nehemiah's spot to lose? Do you think they could put Keionte there and maybe move Nehemiah inside? He's done a little bit of that. I mean, That's an interesting battle to me, just because it's a new group of coaches. They don't really care about what you've done. They care about what you're going to do this year. That's probably the battle I'm most intrigued by right now.
I personally like Nehemiah Pritchett more on the outside than the inside. And I think the numbers have kind of reflected that in his career.
Sure.
But yeah, I do think, like we've said it in the past, like you need 3 like awesome outside corners that you're willing to put at any time. Like I think that's the key for Auburn is like, can you find only 2 will start, but you need 3 that you feel like are SEC starter caliber, and 4 would be awesome. But
Totally.
like 3 is that kind of spot. So it's like, yeah, with Nehemiah.
Well, I'm sorry, Ferg. Do you think Keionte is the 3rd one, or do you think Keionte will be moved inside just to get him on the field?
You know, that's the thing, because it's that what do they do with that 5th defensive back spot? Is that more of a safety that they play, that they move around and turn loose, or is that more of a nickel corner? Because if it's more of a nickel corner, I think it's DJ, or DJ, Keionte, and Nehemiah. I think DJ, Keionte, and Nehemiah, like that, if that is your core group at corner, and then you have that next wave of the K and Lees and the JD Rims and all these other guys coming in.
JC Hart, baby, let's go.
JC Hart, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna always have a soft spot for JC Hart because covered him in high school, right down the road at Poca. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like that seems to be like that could be your group of corners that you can lean on the most. And then like if the rest is at safety, you look at Jalen, you look at Zion, and then just see what else. Donovan Kaufman, Marquise Gilbert, Craig McDonald's still on the roster. Caden Bridges and Caleb Wooden have already played.
Craig McDonald, I legit forgot about him, and I loved him. I was so excited about him. He could totally make a splash.
Hey, new coaching staff, and I think one of the things with this DB room that's really interesting, and we talked about it last week with him, is that you have Zach Etheridge back, which is huge because not only is Zach Etheridge one of the best recruiters in the country,
he's a good coach too.
He's a good coach, and it's that familiarity. And then you bring in Crime Dog back into the picture, who has a great track record of experience with DB rooms in the SEC, and he's a guy that is familiar with Auburn and all that. So it's just that you're going to have some of that stability, some of that consistency, I think, there. But there's also, with Crime coming in, with a new defensive scheme, with a new coordinator, like there's going to be room to kind of mix and match and do some things differently, and that might be able to unlock that DB room because – that's a crazy. There's 19 scholarship guys in that room, and a good bit of experience to go along with it. So I mean that you got to win. You got to win on the back end, especially in modern college football. So we'll see how they sort it all out. But they're not going to be lacking for options.
Yeah, that's really the only position group right now that's built for the present and the future.
Yes,
on the whole roster.
Yeah.
Maybe you could say running back. I guess you could probably say running back there too.
Running back now at this point for sure.
But with Cobb coming in, but yeah, I can't wait to see it. All right, we hinted at it earlier, but for some reason we didn't see the defensive line stunt a whole lot. Roberts, I think that'll change. Ferg, I want to get your thoughts on that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Alumni Hall. Alumni Hall is the best place to buy all of your Auburn sports swag, whether it's what you wear, whether you shirt, hats, jerseys. Doesn't matter. Accessories. They've got all kinds of different, officially Auburn licensed jewelry and sunglasses and things like that. If you want to beef up your tailgate, they've got stuff there too. Drinkware. They've got everything. If it's Auburn, they can slap Auburn on something. They've got you covered at Alumni Hall. And of course, with basketball heating up, they've got all kinds of basketball swag, baseball swag, softball swag. They've got it all at Alumni Hall. Their physical locations in Auburn on South College Street, Opelika, it's in Tigertown, and they've got a location in Huntsville for the North Alabama listeners up there. Be sure to check out our friends at Alumni Hall or online at alumnihall.com. Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer. I was talking with an Auburn defensive lineman and just kind of hearing them talk about how simple what they were asked to do last year was. It doesn't sound as simple anymore. And that's exciting. That's a very, very exciting thing. When you talk about stunts and actual things being called for the entire defense, not just the linebackers and safeties, I think it's going to make Auburn tougher to score on in 2023. And I think we're going to need that.
I'll read you a quote that I got from Ron Roberts last week. He
Okay.
was talking about havoc rate. He says, quote, "You control some of that schematically with how tackles for losses occur. Tackles for loss typically occur off D-line movement, stunts, pressure. If you're going to get them, you got to do it. If you're going to sit there in a base defense, the only way you get them is if my guy's better than your guy and whoops him and gets a tackle for loss. But the nature we play, we're going to go after it. We're going to get tackles for loss, get behind the sticks, and put us in favorable downs. There will be movement. There will be blitzes. There will be disguise pressures. There'll be sims, creepers, all that. You're going to get all that on this defensive line. And this defensive line room is really fascinating because there's a lot of big guys, to play with all those linebackers and DBs floating around. You need big guys down the middle of your defense.
Yep.
They go get 3 different 300-pound defensive linemen to enter this room. Still light on guys that you would say are probably those jacks, those like we're going to go after you type of edge rushers. We'll see how they develop that moving forward. Big year for Dylan Brooks. Obviously, there's an opportunity there, for
Keldrick.
For Keldrick Faulk to jump in. Elijah McAllister's coming in as well. Like you've got those pieces in place. But the interesting thing here, and I wrote about it last week at the Observer, you've got Ron Roberts, who 2 years ago at Baylor, he had one of the most havoc-producing defenses in the country. They had a havoc rate of nearly, I think it was like 25%, maybe, or 28%, which means over 1 out of every 4 snaps they had, there was something chaotic happening for the offense, which is exactly what you want.
Love that.
And number 2, your defensive line coach, your defensive line coach, Jeremy Garrett, not only does he have that experience coming from the NFL, working with guys like Myles Garrett and others at the Cleveland Browns, last season, his first year at Liberty goes from a decent defensive line to one of the best groups in the country at getting after the quarterback. And you look at, they're number 3 in the country in sacks. You look at the guys who got on the defensive line who got sacks for them. You got a 240-pound guy, a 290-pound guy, a 275-pound guy, and a 250-pound guy is your top 4. Like, there is a variety. You don't have to necessarily be like the prototype to get sacks in this scheme. And so I'm really, really interested to see how all that works together this season, because they got the big guys up front. It's going to be what can you do with that edge spot. And with the way they run that scheme, maybe you just need one. Maybe you just need 1 or 2 guys to really pop. Who is that going to be? But yeah, you're going to see a lot more movement. And I think that's going to be big for dudes like Marcus Harris, who I think have pass rushing potential, Jeffrey Umbaugh, who have pass rushing potential. But the last 2 seasons, they were mostly kind of down the middle, run plug-in type of dudes.
So I think we all assume that the coaching is going to set up guys to succeed more, or at least put them in situations to succeed. Give me a guy at each level, a defensive lineman, a linebacker, and a defensive back that you think will benefit from this new style of defense. Who are the winners right now as we go into spring?
Okay, yeah. I'm going to go with, in the DB room, I am going to pick, Keionte Scott seems to be the one that goes for me, just because I think it's that scheme where it's like, hey, can you do some of everything at defensive back? You're perfect for us, man. We will find ways to get you on the field. We'll find ways to move you around. I do think that, he can do more than just be a nickel corner. He can do, he's got that versatility, and he played really, really well, right off the bat last year. So, I'll go with Keionte Scott. Linebacker spot. Again, we're going back to Tolan, I think, real quick. Obviously he came in to play in this scheme, but it's just that athleticism, like you were talking about earlier, being able to spy Bryce Young, but also be able to be a dude who can get into the backfield and make plays, drop back in coverage.
His traits, Demaro Tolan's traits scream all SEC linebacker to me.
And defensive line, I'm gonna put my stamp on it here. And I'm gonna try to will this one correct, because I've been kind of hit or miss recently with my breakout picks. I look at a guy like Jeffrey Umbaugh, and I'm like, this has got to be it. This has got to be kind of where you can really thrive in a defense like this, because he's big, but he's athletic. There were times last season when he got on the field and you watch him, you're like, whoa, that's pretty special here quickly. And I think this scheme is going to be a better fit for him, because they are going to move guys around more, and they are going to do some more creative things on the interior. And that's going to really make a guy like him, I think, take that step forward and be, what people thought he was going to be coming out of junior college, which was the number 1 player in the country at his level. I'm really high on Mbob just because I think, when you come in and say, hey, we're going to move our defensive line, we're going to stunt, we're going to do a lot of simulated stuff and pressures like that. I think of big guys who can move really, really well, and that's definitely Jeffrey Mbob.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on all of that. Ferg, you're killing it these days with basketball and football content. How can people check out everything that you've got going on?
Yeah, auburnobserver.com. It's $6 a month to sign up, or you can pay $60 and you get a full year, which means that's 2 months free because that's how math works. Or you can sign up for a free trial. All of our newsletters, all of our podcasts coming straight to your inbox. So, like, if you're a subscriber today, you got a mailbag and a podcast. I wrote about Marcus Davis this week. I wrote about Philip Montgomery and Hugh Freeze trying to come together to do a new offense. I was in Texas for the basketball game. Big one this weekend against Alabama. There's a whole lot of stuff going on at the Observer, so it's a perfect time to sign up. You're getting a ton of stuff pretty much every day of the week. auburnobserver.com.
Yep, you can find all my written work at auburndaily.com, and we will be back tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.